gives me great pleasure to introduce today's lecture and actually to be involved in this lecture series altogether, because we were forced in a way to put these lectures online. But it's become such a great thing to have this series of lectures online that we now will be doing these lunchtime lectures virtually into the future, partly because it's really nice to get people from all over the world coming in and listening to something that just at this particular time, you can think of all of us in the UK having our sandwiches now. But it also allows us to kind of reach out to people for whom it's quite difficult to, for example, come to London or even come into central London for a quick hour-long break in the middle of the day. We all know that the working day tends to get very jammed up with things. And so having this as a virtual event allows us to just take that little bit of a break and take that break, but have it be with the society and to learn something new, which has been a great pleasure for me over the last about year and a half. For those of you who aren't fellows of the Linnean Society, and I know from experience that some of you are and some of you aren't, is the Linnean Society is the oldest extant natural history society in the world. Now, it's all great being the oldest of something, but actually one of the things that we are about is inspiring people to really care about nature, to understand nature and to value nature and to help promulgate that message of caring about nature far outside the boundaries of science. And for that reason, our fellows come from all backgrounds and all walks of life. To be a fellow of the society, you don't need to be a highfalutin academic. All kinds of people are fellows of the society. So if you aren't a fellow, please do check into becoming a fellow and join the great Linnean family, of which Dan, one of our speaker today, is a member. And I'd just like to take just a minute to introduce him before he starts. Really, I want to give the floor to him as soon as possible because I know he has so much interesting to say. Dan is a biodiversity educationalist who's worked on a number of different kinds of projects and biodiversity-related projects around the city of Brighton and Hove, where he's based. As you'll find out, he's based in other places as well. He retired in February this year from 22 years of teaching in a comprehensive school in Brighton, where he has looked after environmental and science education. And he's been given a number of different awards. And over the last while, he's been establishing conservation projects actually quite a long way from Brighton and Hove. And what he'll talk to us today is what does it actually take to start a conservation project in another country? And his title is about a serendipitous odyssey, which is absolutely appropriate given that he's speaking to us from Corfu, which is certainly one of those places that odysseys have touched in the past. Dan, over to you, and thank you so much for giving us this lecture today.
Thank you, Sandy. It's great to be with you. This is all about the challenges and joys of starting another conservation project in a different country, and you'll find out all about that as I carry on in this serendipitous odyssey. So for those of you that have heard about Corfu before, probably English people mostly, will be through this book, through Gerald Durrell's book. But for me personally, I was lucky enough to come here at the age of 15 in 1976. And I was just overwhelmed by the diversity of plant and animal life. It was absolutely astonishing. If it wasn't big moths, tortoises, snakes, sea cucumbers, toads under rocks, it was just an absolute incredible number of different types of species and lots of them. And when I got back, my Aunt Mabel said to me, you really need to read this book. And it was, I think, reading this book that really crystallized my passion for Corfu. So just for those of you that don't know, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner here, we've got a little map of Italy. To the right of the very heel of Italy, you can see a blue dot, and that is Corfu, which is very, very close. If we look at the bigger map now, they're very, very close to the mainland of Albania. It's only about 2.5 kilometers away from there. This northeast part of the island is the most altitudinous area. And then down the left-hand, the western side of the island, there is a spine of mountains as well. The statistics for the island are that it has 585 kilometers square or 230 miles square. That's as an area. That's a quarter of the size of Sussex, my home county. It's 63 kilometers or 39 miles long, 28 kilometers or 17 miles at its widest point. It has 217 or 100 kilometers or 135 miles coastline, and its highest point is Mount Pantocrator, which is 906 meters or 2,972 feet. So you get some idea about the size. It's just a bit bigger than the Isle of Wight. Climate, well, obviously it's mild but mostly rainy in the winter, very, very dry in the summer, and basically it is the spring and the autumn which are the best times to come if you're a naturalist. There is stuff going on in the summer, don't get me wrong, but those are the really fantastic times to visit this location. In terms of habitats, well, the Venetians 500 years ago encouraged the Corfutes to plant thousands and thousands of olive groves. They also planted, in amongst that landscape, there's also lots of cypresses. But in that, if you look and you go around, you find an incredible number of temperate species like dogwood and blackthorn and hawthorn, and then elms and willows, which is very surprising to find for me as a Northern European to find in the Mediterranean. There's also areas of fenland, there's open meadows, there's garrigue and maquis vegetation, particularly around all the pass, which is great for wildlife. There's little plots, like you can see in this illustration here, of little bits of agriculture. There's the amazing limestone pavements up in the mountains. And then, of course, you've got the incredible coastlines. So butterfly species richness in Europe obviously increases as you go further and further south. And you'd think really that would be a good reason for me to pick Corfu to study the butterflies there. I mean, what I must say is that in 2007, after a long period of not being there, I went with my family. It became a regular location for us to travel to. I was interested in the nature of it, but this wasn't the main reason why I focused on this project in Corfu. In fact, the answer was that in April 2014, I had a radical prostatectomy, which means I had my prostate removed because I had prostate cancer. And for anybody that's had that process, they know that you're bound at home for 3 months. You can't really go out. And I was desperate. As a naturalist, this was the spring, I was desperate to do something. And I was stuck indoors. And I thought, well, maybe if I started a Facebook page in Corfu about butterflies and other wildlife, maybe people would add their photographs. So that's what I did, and I had this sort of whimsy about, this is what I wrote, I had a whimsy about writing a book about Corfu butterflies, and I knew that an atlas of the distribution would be essential for that work. And I invited people to put their pictures up on the page. And as an encouragement, I put some photographs I'd taken. This is the Lulworth skipper. It's one of 3 near threatened species on Corfu. When I say near threatened, that's a European distribution. On Corfu, it's immensely abundant, which is very encouraging. This is the silver-washed fritillary. I posted this particular image. These are now in Corfu, now flying about. They're just freshly emerged. They look beautiful. In fact, I posted a lot of different butterflies in Corfu, and I was the only one posting. So in desperation, I went to some other Corfu Facebook pages and found this particular picture put up on a gardening page. And I contacted the chap and I said, would you like to put that on my Corfu Butterflies and Other Wildlife Facebook page? And he did. And this man, John Denne, has become a lifelong friend. He's a wonderful man, a brilliant human being. And he had been interested in butterflies, but me being in England, being prepared to give the time to help him with his identification, allowed him in his property in Corfu to start really getting engaged. And he did 2 really crucial things. Number one was he started gardening for butterflies. And this is one of the things that he found was really useful, these Echium spikes, which are often much taller than myself. And over time, he ended up planting thousands, well, certainly hundreds of these spikes. And they attracted masses and masses of butterflies. And this information that John gleaned over the years about what to plant in his garden for butterflies in Corfu was really, really valuable to us. And at the same time, it was something that I don't think anybody had ever done before. And he also, which I thought was incredibly useful, was he kind of did a transect. and he recorded this information. Now, these days I look at this and I can see a few misidentifications in that list there. But for the most part, he got somewhere in the region of 44 species recorded between August 2014 and June. I can't see what that is. I think it's 2015 or 16. 10,000 species, 10,000 records he did in that time. And would you notice the most abundant butterfly was the painted lady? Now, actually, if we look at this, 2,675 of those were in March 2016. So John was observing a mass migration of painted lady butterflies. And by this point, we're like 2 years on, you can see that we had probably about 100, 150 people on the Facebook page. A lot of people were putting up stuff like this, which was really interesting because the BBC put out an appeal because they wanted to make a television program about the painted lady making its major migration through Europe. And so we spoke to them, told them about what we've seen, and then that became a part of the BBC 4 program about the butterflies, this particular butterfly's adventure. That was really interesting to me because I felt that we'd made a real difference, a contribution. And, you know, there I am back in the UK getting all this information all the time. Another thing that John did, which I thought was really interesting, we've got the data for this, we've never done it again. John recorded the diversity of species that he found in his garden. And you can see there, June was like the time for maximum diversity. It's not the best time to see butterflies because whilst there's most species seen then, some are old and failing and some have only just come out. So they don't always look immaculate. But overall, you can see from April all the way through to October, you're likely to see certainly over 15 species of butterfly for sure. In fact, there is no month in Corfu when you don't see butterflies. So this was really, really interesting and a massive help that John gave to starting that process. Now, enter Jason Fisher. Jason is a birder, and what really pleased me about Jason was that whilst he was a birder, he also knew a lot about butterflies, and he was one of the first people who's coming on. Instead of saying, Dan, what is this butterfly? He was saying, this is a long-tailed blue, or this is a two-tailed pattern, this is what I've seen. And that was really encouraging because the level of interest was beginning to increase. And I spent an awful lot of time trying to get people understanding why the butterflies were the ones which I said they were. They'd give me a photograph through the page and I'd say, this is a painted lady because. And one of the books that I get people to use is The Butterflies of Europe by Tristan Lafrancis. I like this book because it's a key. It's out of print, but you can contact Tristan, you can find him online, and he will send you a PDF of this, which is great because you can have it on your phone. And, you know, it's a key so that it's a yes or a no answer. Does it have a black end to the antennae or does it not? And so, you know, this type of increasing in interest and, you know, getting people to be aware of the diagnostic features of various butterflies was great because as a community as a whole, people were beginning to learn quite a bit. Bob and Tricia Giles then came on the scene, and what was great about their contribution is they're very successful in running the Corfu the Corfu Forum, which has nearly 40,000 subscribers to it, a Facebook group. And they have a lot of experience using Facebook. So Bob said, Dan, why don't you do a fixed post? You can have the species of butterflies as we see them, and we can begin lecture everybody to see. And that was a really great idea. It's still there, people use that. That's really fantastic. Bob was also really very keen to help out. So Sue here saw some Glanville fritillary caterpillars. That's what she thought they were. They weren't very good photographs. So I said to Bob, hey, Bob, here in the Isle of Wight, we're seeing lots of Glanville fritillaries. Could you check that they're coming out in Corfu? He went out, got these photographs, and within an hour or two, back home, I know, in Brighton, I know that the Glanville fritillary is now out in Corfu, which was massive when you think about it. You know, very, very real advantage to doing this. So I thought, let's test this. Well, as a child, when I was there in 1976, I went with my father on the back of a motorbike and we drove up into the mountains and I found a Southern Swallowtail, a single specimen. And I thought, I wonder if that butterfly is still there. So I put this post, I put it up, and this is on the 3rd of May, 2014. This is on the 20th of May. Suddenly someone put it up. Now, it seemed to me that in the old days, you'd either have to get on a plane or you'd have to locate a butterfly expert, ask them to go look. No, this was just almost like immediate. And I was astonished at the power and the interest that was coming back from people about this sort of thing. So how many butterfly species are there on Corfu? Now, Peter Sutton, fantastic guy, Peter. He's a school teacher, but he's a real polymath. He's writing like 7 books at the moment. He's been going backwards and forwards to Corfu for 27 years. He's writing a book on the natural history of Corfu. And he did a meticulously researched review of all the references to butterflies reported from Corfu. Most of these were like entomologists that have been on holiday there with their families and have managed to get half a day out to look. And, you know, many of them were not that well qualified. And so he put it together and he's got this 85 species as a general idea. Now, we know now that not all of those species have been found on Corfu, but it was a good start. Stamatis Guinness, a fantastic, passionate Corfu, really interested in biodiversity, put together a photographic guide of the butterflies of Corfu. He illustrates 70 species, although some of those have questions about their identification, but it gave us an idea about the species. And it was a Corfiate doing this, which was massively influential. And then Gavalas and Curtis in 2018 did a review, and they looked at 78 species. Sorry, they estimated 78 species from all the records that they could find. And what's great about their work is that they also did some genitalia analysis, which allowed us to realize that there are some Hipparchia and some Libythea species, which we've really got pinned down now. So we know we've got Delatins grayling. We know we've got the wood white. So I then started thinking, well, you know, we've got to get some meetings in the field. So these 3 guys here, this is on the right, Cosmo Aprius, Chris Little, and Yanni Gastratos. And Yanni and Chris have become immensely good friends of mine. I see them regularly. This was our first day out really as a sort of a group adventure on one of the occasions when I visited Corfu. And we were looking for the southern festoon because Peter Sutton had seen one individual, Stamatis Guinness had recorded it, but we weren't really sure. We suspected it was quite rare. We went to the right habitat. There it was. We found it. We watched it laying eggs. And we discovered what type of habitat it was on. Now, once you start discovering the habitat that butterfly requires, you then find yourself looking around for the habitat, not the butterfly. And then we found it everywhere. I said to Peter Sutton on another trip, I said, I think it's everywhere all over the island, Peter. It could be right in this habitat we're in now. Look, it's just right. We looked down there with the caterpillars. And we came to the conclusion that people were just not going to Corfu at the right time of year to see the butterfly, which is massively unfortunate because this is such a beautiful butterfly out in March and April and really should not be missed by anybody. So these little trips out became a regular feature. Here we have Bob and Yanni again with Yanni's partner, Zoe Fondaluku, and we were just exploring. Obviously, these people live there, they know the area, but for me, it was just great to explore and discover all these things. And here I am getting contact with the Southern Swallowtail, or actually I have a Southern White Admiral on my arm there, but for me personally, the Southern Swallowtail will always have a significance, which is why I made it the iconic emblem of what we do. You know, just discovering new species. This Hungarian skipper, I'd never seen it before. You know, in those days, it was completely new to me. But now I know to look at the antennae. I know that they're black tip, but with a white spot on. I know that the hind wings have got a perpendicular shape like that on them, which tells me immediately it's Hungarian skipper. But in this case, look, the female's laying on Sanguis orba minor. So I know that Salaburnette is a host plant, so I knew that it's the butterfly. So the building up this skill base for me was personally very rewarding, but also helped me a great deal with the work that I was doing online with the Facebook work. And it very much felt like an extension of my regular work because I was a school teacher at that time. I've retired now, but I would come home, do all my marking, and then I'd be sort of helping people online with their identification. Now, there were so many discoveries to be made. I mean, this is a little graphic that I did. I used to do this for the Sussex branch of Butterfly Conservation at Christmas when they didn't have many sightings on their sightings page, so I would do something like this. And this is all about how we found hill-topping swallowtails at Mount Pantocrator. So they go to the very top, the big high part in the landscape, going right to the very top of the topographic region, and they look for their mates there. And then once they've mated, they disperse. So, you know, all of these sort of things were suspected in the case of the scarce swallowtail, but, you know, really good to see. But let me tell you about how this community started to build. Jan Wilcox said to me on the 14th of October 2015, I've seen this big butterfly on Elmira's beach. Does anyone know what it is? Well, immediately I said, look, I've done work in West Africa. I've worked with schools there. We've done lots of biodiversity work there. We've had children catching butterflies. This was the most common species there. Very exciting to see it in Corfu. Can anybody verify what Jan's seen? So that was my message. What I know, next thing I know, because this is a big butterfly, it's sort of my hand wingspan sort of thing on the large cases. And John Denne goes down, he finds it. Chris Little jumps in an aeroplane and goes and finds it. Next thing, Tricia Giles finds all of these wings on the floor. What on earth is going on there? John goes the next day, he finds Mantis religiosa's found it as well, and it's eating them. Next thing we know, Jan Wilcox is finding them laying eggs. Bob's going down there and seeing them couple. I think in the meantime, I've seen where it is. Jan thinks she's found the host plant. This was getting very exciting. I can't tell you, every day I was coming back thinking, what have they found now? Bob's showing me here on some aromatic innula just how many butterflies there were. It was just an incredible amount. And he's also showing me the region in which that they were finding them on Elmira's beach. Yanni Gastratus at the same time started plotting them, saying, look, I'm seeing them here and here around Corfu. So it's clearly a major migration, because up to now, Yanni had recorded the only sighting that we'd seen of the plain tiger. So I'm saying, look, we've seen them laying eggs. You've got to look out for the caterpillar. Candida then sends this and says, look, I've got them in my garden. I said, don't worry about the butterfly in the garden. Look below, you can see the caterpillar. You've got the caterpillar in your garden. So people then started finding the eggs, the caterpillars. It was just an immensely exciting thing. We call ourselves butterfly enthusiasts because we infuse. There was so much enthusiasm about this, so much passion. People were really, really excited. So I'm wondering, what is this plant? And I said to John Denne, you're into plants. Would you go and get the plant for me? He brought some back. He was looking at them in the book, and he said, this has got some eggs on it, Dan. So you had 2 caterpillars. Those caterpillars started feeding on the plant. And then by December, John sending me pictures of the caterpillars and showing me the length of them. And it was really interesting. He called them the Elmiras too, a bit like 2 Beirut prisoners, because you had 2 of them that were having to suffer the slings of arrows of the Corfu winter. In January, they turned into chrysalises. And it was in February that they emerged. He had them in his greenhouse. He was feeding them on milkweed, which I think he bought from the local nursery. And I guess February is probably the earliest you could release these plain tigers. It was a great thing. But what came out of it was a whole load of data. And we could see there that on this occasion, the butterflies were arriving, the first sightings at sort of mid-October, all the way through to sort of mid-November. Now, year on year, we now know that this is an annual occurrence. And in fact, last year I was seeing them arrive in August. So this is a really, really interesting phenomenon, and other entomologists have plotted this migration of the butterflies from Africa through this region of the Mediterranean. So it'd be very interesting to see how this carries on. Another thing that came out of this which was really interesting, was how the group got very, very concerned when the local municipality started clearing up the beach and in their view, damaging the habitat. Now, I was thinking this is a migratory species. It's going to be opportunistic about wherever it goes. And I was saying, guys, this is not really a big deal because they could always go somewhere else. And the passion that was coming back to me was telling me, no, you don't get it, Dan, you don't get it. And you know, over time, I think this was a kernel of our concern about the conservation of butterflies in Corfu. Because actually, I was wrong and they were absolutely right. I live in the UK for the most of the time, and it's my view that our landscape is almost industrialized with regards to the agriculture that we practice. In Corfu, it's not like that. And that's reflected in the amazing diversity of wildlife that you see there. And so what my colleagues and my friends were saying really was, if you don't protect every single bit, even the common stuff, that's where the erosion starts. And, you know, we've seen this since then, that there have been lots of developments. The Eremites development, which has gone through and has been very controversial, is a good example of that, where developments are taking place and no surveys have been done on what damage it might do to the habitat. So this was the beginning of our concerns about conservation for butterflies in Corfu. And in a previous talk, I asked the group to give me some ideas about what they felt about what we were doing. And Chris Little said the value of this group is immense in developing skills and challenging, resolving identification, normalizing odd behavior. I think that says a lot more about his family's view about his behavior when he's going out looking for butterflies. Bob Giles said that, you know, by being a part of this group, that photographing butterflies became something of a challenge, but with the aid of the group, he actually learned quite a bit. Yanni Gastratus said, you know, when a Facebook group arrived in our lives, you could find people with knowledge in aspects that could help you improve in several ways. This group helps us understand better these small neighbors of ours, the butterflies. John Denne said that when Facebook Corfu Butterfly page started, I was soon in conversation. It was a huge relief to communicate with people who were not just hunters or collectors or pretty pictures, but were very interested in the environment. And not only that, they could help me identify the butterflies that were now sitting at home in our garden. And finally, Jason Fisher, I really thought, just in one sentence, he said, the best thing about this group is a sense of community where everybody helps everybody else out. That meant masses to me. I really felt very proud of what we'd created. So I felt we needed to go to the next level, because here, this is April 2017, and I brought some passionate butterfly enthusiasts from the UK. And I thought if they come and my Corfu and expat resident friends who were in Corfu could see their behavior, that might rub off a bit. So here we are doing a bit of work in Old Peripheria. When I say work, there's obviously lots of lovely moments in tavernas where we have something sweet and have a beer. And at this point, I'd never really been sure about what a nettle tree looked like. And I was sitting having my beer, looking up into the trees next to this taverna. And I said, you know, if ever a tree was a nettle tree, it's that one, because look at the shape of those leaves. And then somebody said, well, I think there's a speckled wood up in it. And I said, well, hang on a minute. If this is a nettle tree, that's going to be the nettle tree butterfly. So we all got up. You can see us all with our photograph, our cameras photographing it. And that was it. Suddenly we realized, yes, that's exactly what it was. And then we learned so much. We forgot about dinner, we forgot about our beers. We walked around and we were seeing these butterflies in trees, territorial, looking for mates in an afternoon. This was a new species. We'd learned so much, and it was massively interesting. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see my very good friend, Richard Roebuck, pointing out the single nettle tree butterfly. And he really got passionate about this. And we were driving back to Corfu town. We pulled up outside a school where there was a big nettle tree there. And then he shouted, stop the car, stop the car. There were butterfly caterpillars in the tree. We got out and see that I'd never seen this before. We do a Google search for a nettle tree caterpillar. It was very difficult to find one. But here you could see them. I didn't realize they had characteristic poses. I didn't realize they had color morphs. Later on, I went back and I found the chrysalises and saw where they actually attach themselves to the nettle tree leaves. This was very rewarding because we didn't know about this, and there were probably lots of others that didn't. And also really valuable because, you know, it started making me think that you could start to attain and acquire photographs for, you know, an atlas. So, you know, here's Peter Sutton meeting us up. He said, Dan, you know, I've found a place where I've seen a Grecian copper. They're territorial, aren't they, coppers? Let's go down and see if we can find it. We go down, we find it, we find loads. I mean, it's another case of people are not looking. And in fact, the Grecian copper is not uncommon. It's very common all over Corfu. Nobody's looking. So this is massive. It's really, really great to realize that there's so much to discover. And as a naturalist in the 21st century, it's so unusual to find yourself in a position where you're making original discoveries. So a lot of this stuff was beginning to coalesce in my mind. I realized, you know, if there was going to be an atlas, we needed to do a butterfly survey, the Corfu Butterfly Survey. I also realized, you know, having done a lot of citizen science work on bees, butterflies, I really felt that was the way ahead. And so I spoke to Martin Warren, the then CEO of Butterfly Conservation, the national charity in the UK, now the director of development of Butterfly Conservation in Europe. And I explained to him what I was doing and talked about a potential project and really pushing this a bit further. And he said, Dan, why don't you call it Corfu Butterfly Conservation? And for me, that was a blessing because it was a phrase or a name that I'd had in my mind, but in a way didn't feel that I could. It felt audacious. This was a blessing for me, and I was just thrilled to call it that. So the project became Corfu Butterfly Conservation. So our next trip, which was April 2019, more Corfu Butterfly Conservation enthusiasts go, and we had an inaugural meeting. We were delighted to be welcomed by a bunch of Corfu Butterfly enthusiasts. We've now got our own insignia, polo shirts, lots of dignitaries from Corfu were there to help us. Lee Durrell very, very kindly gave a talk to what we were doing. And we met the mayor, so the vice mayor. So meeting the vice mayor was very helpful because it was making these links. And this is what was so amazing about Facebook, really, was that there was a slow realization that there was this integration with Corfu society and the Corfu community. And we were made to feel very, very welcome. Now, at this point, I must introduce to you Anne Sordinas. Now, Anne came in about this point, and she is just so passionate about butterflies. Her interest has grown and grown and grown. Her contribution to the project is massive. She's Corfu by birth, but lived in America and so speaks fluent Americanese, I guess, and fluent English. And she's done a massive amount helping us with translation. And she's also passionate about, looking at how the early stages of butterflies develop. So her contribution is amazing. And there's absolutely no doubt when we eventually write this atlas, Anne will play a major role as one of the co-authors. So here we are, the provisional survey we're doing. We decided we wanted to do a provisional survey to get some idea about how easy it would be to cover the ground, because on the one hand, we wanted this to be a citizen science project where we're encouraging visiting enthusiasts and residents in Corfu to record the butterflies. But at the same time, we wanted to know just what we could achieve by getting lots and lots of people to travel to Corfu, because in the spring and in the late autumn, not many people go for the sun, the standard tourist model. But, if you could increase the number of people going in these other times when it's really good for natural history, you could also help bring extra revenue to Corfu. And I was very keen to see that happen. These are the kind of regular spring butterflies that you would see. I mean, they're just beautiful. And at that time, mostly immaculate. And you can see, there's only, 3 species I can see here that are in the UK. And so it's just lovely, really, to be able to see these butterflies. And all winter long, I pine to get there back in the spring. So I started working then with butterfly conservation in seriousness. Sam Millis is the International Director of Butterfly Conservation, and he's also the chair of Butterfly Conservation Europe. And he brought on board Eva Prokop, the grant and trust fundraising manager for butterfly conservation. And initially, Sam and myself and another were working on the development of the program that we'd be looking at. And then at the same time, we were then looking at how we would produce, some planning for what's going on. And Eva then started looking at some grant funding for what we wanted to do. We had some project objectives that that have grown and have crystallized. I should just let you know what they are. So we want to encourage the continued growth of a responsible community of Corfu butterfly enthusiasts. We wanted to survey the butterflies of Corfu and determine the number of species on the island, their distribution, as well as their flight periods. We wanted to find out if the butterfly communities of Corfu could be used as indicators of good habitat quality, and if so, with the help with the conservation of other Corfu wildlife. We wanted to identify the potential losses of species and habitats and inform the Greek authorities about which needs protecting, to publish the butterfly survey results and conclusions drawn from this data into the first comprehensive Corfu Butterfly Atlas, to encourage ecotourism outside the main tourist season, bringing extra revenue, and eventually for Corfu Butterfly Conservation to become a non-profit making organisation working in partnership with both governmental and non-governmental partners in Greece, the UK and Europe. So we realised we'd need somewhere in the region of £130,000, but much of the work to do this programme of work we could do through voluntary pro bono work, and we only really needed £41,000. So Eva and Sam and myself spent most of the last year doing all kinds of different grant applications, and over 50% of them have been successful. That's really, really very encouraging. The first one that's massive was to get £3,000 from the Royal Entomological Society from the Goodman Award, because that allowed us to produce the Corfu Butterfly Conservation.org website. If I say this myself, you have to forgive me, but I'm immensely proud of this. I work with Steve Cheshire. He's an incredibly talented web designer. It's a great website. I'm really pleased with it because you can submit your data here where you find your butterflies. You find out lots about the different species. There's lots of news, there's lots of articles about why we're doing it. There's just so much. There's videos about why we're doing it. And also, one of the main reasons for this was that we realized that you can't go back with Facebook. You can't scroll back too far before you fill up your RAM of your computer and it just crashes. So a lot of the data that's on there has been lost. So we needed something independent for ourselves. And so this really was a really good start to making this project move forward. We have a team of individuals who are really, really keen to help us. These people come and go. They're involved in various ways to help what's going on. And but they are a team, because this at the moment is a project. And at some point, we'll have a committee or we'll have a board where individuals are going to really take on a more formal role. We have a need, of course, to raise funds to make this project work. And one of the ways which we could do that is through sales and accounts. Sales of different things like this t-shirt like I'm wearing now, with our own logos, through enameled pins, all that sort of stuff we can sell. But we can't sell that particularly easily in Greece now. Not that we would be looking for funding from Greece, because, as you know, Greece is financially embarrassed, I suppose you could say. As an economy, things are not easy for the Greeks. Most of our funding up to now has been from the UK. But we will want to sell our books eventually. So we need to do that. So we've reached out for information about what sort of associations or companies or limited companies we can be, and that's all in the process. And indeed, our international Zoom conversations with the members of the team have really most recently been focusing about what this is going to be. And I think we're very close to going from becoming what was a project to becoming the organization, Corfu Butterfly Conservation. And it is crucially important for us, although the main driver has been up to now from the UK. There's increasing evidence, like we're up to 630 members of the Facebook page now, somewhere in that region. And most people that are joining now are Greek or Corfu. So most of the funding that we've got up to now have helped us get some small parts of this. We realized fairly early on we wouldn't be able to get one big block of funding to do everything. So Butterfly Conservation have made a tacit agreement with us to help get small pockets of funding to do various things. So at the moment, we have made an application to the Ionian Environmental Foundation. We're most hopeful that we're going to get funding to produce this A1 poster of the butterflies of Corfu. This is all the 75 species that Corfu Butterfly Conservation have managed to identify and be sure that are on the island now. So the idea is that you've got this in your living room and you look out in the garden and you see a butterfly. You can be fairly sure that the butterfly out there is on your poster. You don't have to look at 400 different species in the European Butterfly Book. And also, I know from experience back in the UK, where we've printed lots of these for Hampshire, for Sussex, for Surrey, for the Brighton and Lewis Downs Biosphere Reserve, these posters really have an impact on the public. And we really wanted to get the public involved. And if there's people not engaged in the Facebook page, how will they find out? So these we're hoping to have all over Corfu, and we're hoping to print 10,000 of them. So they're general for the general public. These here, or I should say that I've been working with my good colleague Bob Foreman in that design. These here are slightly different. These are two little leaflets 12-page leaflets, and they're designed to be used in the field. And instead of having sort of museum specimens, these are live pictures of butterflies. They tell a great deal about what the diagnostic features are and when to expect to see them. And they also tell about the Corfu Butterfly Survey and ABLE, which is a European-wide attempt to survey butterflies. And we've done this in conjunction with European Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, with Butterfly Conservation Europe, and our good friends in butterfly conservation, well, Dutch butterfly conservation, I've got to thank Christina Surveyor for her massively wonderful designs that she's put into this, and hours of work to help make this happen. And Sam Ellis also has helped me and Christina edit this and produce this document. So we hope that these will be given to members of the public when we go on touring. I should say that the Rothschild Foundation agreed to publish these, pay for this publication, and we're immensely grateful for that contribution. So here we are, here's a group of individuals going out doing this. Now, this is me going out with a group of individuals. There are other Corfuists in Corfu who are prepared to do efforts like this, but the major bit of funding that we wanted for outreach, we didn't get. We wanted to be able to employ people to take, to Corfuists particularly, to go into schools and everything. We didn't get that. So if you have an extra £20,000 that you think you could pass our way or could make us aware of something, then where we could get that money, we're really grateful. Now, what can I tell you recently? Well, I'm here now in Corfu, and let me just tell you about this. The Queen of Spain Fritillary. We saw one of those, first one we saw in April 2017. That was an amazing thing up in Mount Pantocrator, going up hill topping. Last October, Bryce Smith saw one of those. So there's a big gap there, 3 years. Bryce Smith saw one of those on the coast. This year we've come back and we went into some of the pastures in the mountains and we found Queen of Spain fritillaries in most of the meadows that we went to. So we think that what's happening there is it's hill topping, this migrated hill topping, and then the females are laying eggs, and we've got individuals setting up territories. Now, this is really interesting about this ecology of this butterfly. It's something we didn't know they were doing before. This is new original discovery. The Southern Swallowtail, my passion is with this butterfly, and finding this caterpillar was crucial. We knew what it looked like, but what did it feed on? And about a week ago, I found one. And once we found the butterfly caterpillar, then you knew what it was feeding on. The actual host plant is everywhere. And so we were able to take loads of photographs. You can see here at the bottom left-hand corner, a pre-pupa, then the chrysalis itself. But we haven't made a confirmation about that host plant. We think we know what it is. We think it only occurs in Greece and in Corfu, but it doesn't occur in Albania and Italy, we think, which is interesting because that's in those locations, the butterfly has different host plants. So again, really interesting stuff. And of course, all of these photographs are going to be really good to incorporate in our atlas eventually. The Eastern Baton Blue, that's an interesting butterfly because it is the second of the near threatened species on a European basis. We'd only seen 2, 3, 4 records over the last 3 or 4 years. This June, May, lots and lots of records. So we know that whilst it is a near threatened species in Europe, we're actually getting quite a lot of them on Corfu, which is really encouraging. Only 1s or 2s, but they are widely distributed, which is very encouraging. The Linnean Society, as you know, a fantastic society, and they host the Percy Sladen Memorial Fund, and I made an application to help me fund my efforts to come out here, because whilst we're engaging, we started the Corfu Butterfly Survey on the 1st of January 2021, but we knew that there would be individuals that would probably never go into the wilds of Corfu. They would record stuff in their gardens. We needed someone to go to look at the hard to reach species, and I got some funding to do that, and I'm here with my son, who's my assistant. And we found this really interesting thing yesterday, and I'm immensely grateful to the Linnean for their help with this, particularly Elizabeth Rollinson and Ed Tanner, who really helped me out of some tricky situations earlier on. So look at number 1. That is a small blue, which Harry Clark, a valued member of our group, and Mark Colvin, equally so, saw this in Mount Pantocrator a couple of years ago. It was a good sighting, good photograph. Number 2 is the same species in Brighton on some habitat restoration work that I've been doing there for the last 10 years or more. And I've seen many thousands of those, so I know what a small blue looks like. Number 3 and 5, though, are the Osiris blue. Now, look, they are very similar, except some spotting is a little bit different. And then 4 and 6 is a butterfly we saw at Mount Pantocrator about 4 days ago. Now, this butterfly looked very different to me simply because I've seen thousands of small blue, but this was tiny. This was the smallest small blue I'd ever seen in my life. It was smaller than my little fingernail. And so there was a real question. Was this a small blue or was it an Osiris blue? So we put it out to all the different people on the different Facebook groups. I've done lots of lectures in the past with people with grey hair thinking, oh my God, we're losing naturalists. But no, they're all out there in social media that they're studying spiders in Argentina or caddisflies in England or dragonflies in Pakistan or wherever it is. There's thousands of people teaching one another in the same way on our Corfu Butterfly Conservation Facebook page. But nobody could decide. Some said it was definitely Minimus, some said it was definitely Osiris. So this is an issue of verification. The photographs here limit us and we can't go any further. So I'm really delighted to tell you that I've been in communication with these amazing guys, Vlad Dinka in Finland, Leonardo Di Porto in Italy, and Roger Villa in Barcelona. And they have agreed that they will help us with a DNA barcoding project to barcode all of the Corfu butterflies. Now this is really, really encouraging because there are lots of species like the Leptidias, like the Gigenis, like the Hipparchias. There's loads of things which we really need to get some idea. The Gonoptrix species, let me say there's the brimstone, which is one Gonoptrix ramni. There's the Cleopatra, Gonoptrix Cleopatra. Then there's a Gonoptrix farinosa, the powdered brimstone. Now, it's so hard to see the difference between a powdered brimstone and the others. And I spoke to a guy called Bernard Watts, and he said, Dan, you have to understand that evolution didn't take place so that you and I could make species identification that easy. But they are separate species. So I'm hopeful that these guys will be able to help us in that project. And it's very early stages, but very, very exciting to see how that's going. So we're hoping to do some fundraising to be able to get that done. So the future of butterfly conservation in Corfu, obviously we want our project to become an organization. We would love to do a conference. We think that would cost us about £10,000, but I think it would really raise the profile of what we're doing here. We want to complete the Corfu Butterfly Survey and publish the atlas. And we hope that it doesn't stop there because obviously this is a 5-year window. We're trying to do a stop here. Sorry, not a stop. We're trying to survey the butterflies for a 5-year period. And then in the future, we're able to have something to look back on and see what changes. Climate change, habitat changes might give us some real idea about what's going on. So we would love the survey to continue automatically on the website, but at the same time, we'd like to see people realize why transects are important. And I hope that through the work we do with Able that might be very clear. So what can you do to help? I mean, if you're a butterfly enthusiast willing to volunteer on our regular trips, then we'd love you to come and help us with our Corfu Butterfly surveys. They happen fairly regularly. If you're in a position to donate, please help us. You know, £20,000 would make a massive difference with conferences, with employing Corfutes to go into schools to help get kids to be aware of the amazing natural heritage. Let me just tell you, the world is aware of the cultural heritage that the Greeks have given to the Western world, but not many people seem to be aware of the biodiversity heritage that they have. It's just profound. And finally, if you live on or are traveling to Corfu, please record your sightings on our website. It's crucial that we up our game on that. So lastly, you know, making friends. I never really realized that I would make so many friends. I feel so privileged, you know, to found a way to integrate into Corfu society in this so bizarre way and be a part of that. I'm honored to be a part of that. And butterfly enthusiasts are, for the most part, wonderful people. It's really, really great to make those friends. I mean, I've just retired. I retired in February. So for me, like, this is just like, this is a two-tailed pasha. It's on my finger. I mean, many people in the UK think that the purple emperor is like the butterfly. No, you haven't got anything until you've had an experience with this animal. So I'm having a great time. And then finally, I'd like to thank all those people that I've mentioned up to now. I mean, like, it's just been massive, the help that we've had to do that. There's all these organizations that you can see on the bottom who have helped us. I want to say a special thanks to Rob Kessler and his wife, Agalise. They've been wonderful in so many ways, helping us, my son and I, on this particular trip. And then Anne Sordinas is just like fantastic. She's really up there. And my wife, who's long-suffering and very patient, really helps me a lot. But finally, I really want to say a big thanks to my son, Indiana Danahar. because he's just like, it's so wonderful to spend my time with my son like this. He's so great in the field, and he's such a great assistant. I love him to bits, and it's really fantastic to be with him. So thank you very much. I've really enjoyed giving this talk, and I wonder if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was fascinating. And I'm quite jealous of you being in Corfu. It looks absolutely wonderful, and all those great butterflies. And what a great story. There's a couple of questions have come in. And the first of which is there any formal training that could be organized for naturalists, you know, to do what you've done in a way to maintain your experience for posterity? Because in a way, the YouTube recording of this will possibly, you know, it'll be available for forever. But what's forever? Are you planning on doing anything in a kind of training way?
I think there's two ways to answer that, Sandy. First of all, much of the funding applications that we made, our core funding to do outreach, was to train people in the field to identify butterflies. But I think that what you're asking me is something a little bit different.
Yeah.
I think you're asking me, how does someone like me end up doing something like this? And I think the answer in part is, you know, my experiences as a school teacher is one thing, but also my experiences in citizen science, in engaging with biodiversity education have got me to it. So I've been thinking a lot about this myself. You know, there's been lots of skills that, along the way that I've acquired that enable me to do this. But I think that it's very true to say that there are thousands and thousands of people out there who equally have these skills, and they're lost in the ether. They're absolutely able to go out and do stuff. And I've got to tell you, if you're watching this and you think you're able to do something like this, there's plenty of Greek islands left. Go out there, set up a Facebook page of somewhere else, and start the process, because I really do think this is the way in. I'm always.
No, I think maybe what he's asking is more, you know, do you have any plans in the future to sort of have any training events about how to do something like this? Not.
What, to set up another project, a different project?
Yeah, so you know.
No, I don't have any plans to do that, but because it's never occurred to me, and I guess I'm very focused in on what we're trying to achieve here, and that takes up a lot of my time. But I do think it's an interesting idea, because butterfly conservation have supported us massively in what we're trying to do, in part, I think, because they're very interested in this project as a pilot for developing this type of work in other countries within Europe. And so I do think that there will be stuff that's going on at Manor Yard back in Lulworth, where Butterfly Conservation headquarters is set, where they will be thinking about this type of thing, and probably there will be discussions about that sort of thing in the future.
Yeah, and I guess this kind of leads on to the second question, which is it's kind of, you know, and I'll expand it a little bit, is what our listener has asked is, have any of these data been published in any peer-reviewed scientific journal? And if not, is there any interest or plans to do so?
Yeah, well, it's funny, because I was talking to Peter Sutton last night. I was saying, Peter, we need to write something. I mean, we've got to a stage now where we're very confident about what we know is there. Peter did the original review back in 2012. And the first thing that we need to do is really get that paper out, giving a real update about what we're doing, because of course, very soon with the DNA barcoding, the thing's going to change yet again. So it's going to be really interesting to see that progression. So yeah, as we go, we do intend to do a range of papers, particularly when we start finding that we may or may not have species that we didn't think we had here. And then all of that will feed into the atlas, because of course that background will be really, really helpful for when we.
And do you plan to make the atlas online or a hard copy? A
hard copy. We'd like to have it. The website will have quite a bit of information as we develop, and it will have distribution maps as we go along. But we're very keen to have that hard copy, like in the town hall, the municipal town hall in Corfu, or likewise other places. Because if it's on the shelf, then people will see it and they'll be able to reference it. You know, if it's hidden in the ether in the internet, then it's not always really obvious that it's there. You have to go look for it. If it's there and people can see it and they can refer to it, I think that can make a big difference.
Great. And I was sort of wondering, as I was listening to you talk about the effect that this pandemic has had on the organization and the progress that you've made. I mean, what effect has it had?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Yeah, it has had a big impact. Obviously, in terms of people being able to move, that's been a real issue. It's also meant that so people haven't been able to travel to Corfu very much. It means that during lockdown, the Corfuites have not been able to go out and do butterfly surveying. So we actually started in 2020, but we had to stop that. Well, we made that our pilot year where we learned an awful lot, and we restarted in 2021. But I should tell you that whilst it seemed like pulling my hair out, we should be moving forward with this, we've actually been able to use an awful lot of our time in the background doing many of the grant applications, doing much of the work on the websites and producing the publications which you have seen that hopefully will be out available for people very soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that it seems as though it's put a stop to most things, but there's always something that you
and I think we're in I know I hate to use this phrase, it's a new reality, isn't it? Yes, but we're getting used to that new reality. We know that there's certain uncertainty in planning. That should not stop us, you know, that should not stop us making progress. I mean, one of the things which I brought to Corfu is this ethos that I had back in Brighton and Hove. I've done an awful lot of biodiversity education stuff for the last 25 years in Brighton and Hove. And my view is that no one individual can change the world, maybe David Attenborough perhaps, but no one individual can change the world. But we can all do our bit in our own part of the world with a sure and certain knowledge that there are other people all over the place trying to do the same elsewhere. And it's that joint effort, that joint work that makes things move on. So I bring those transferable skills now to Corfu to help push that agenda forward. I'm always worried about being an alien, an outsider, a foreigner coming to somewhere else to tell them how to do things. I'm not trying to tell anyone anything how to do things. I'm just trying to show by example what can be achieved. And my work in West Africa, in Ghana, was a similar experience where I learned an awful lot.
Can I just ask a question about the DNA barcoding? Are you doing that with specimens you collect, or are you doing it with kind of wing scales or legs, or
yeah, so yes, we haven't got permission to collect any butterflies at the moment. You need it. The regulations in Greece about collecting their natural heritage are quite strict, and we are hopeful though, because we've got an awful lot of support not only from these universities in Europe but also here in Corfu. The Ionian University is supportive of our efforts. But yeah, we have to make that application, and then we're finally allowed to use a butterfly net. I mean, to use a butterfly net will make our progress increase manyfold. But you're right, yes, what we will do is a single leg of a butterfly is enough to get the DNA.
Yeah.
And then we can send that. What we would like to do is to take those single legs and have the single specimen, as you know, in the Linnean, you've got all of these standard specimens, many of them original type specimens. We'd like to have a type specimen collection of the 75 species, maybe housed in a municipal building here in Corfu, so that they're the actual samples from which the DNA was taken, and everybody can be sure that is a species was taken here in Corfu. It's undeniable that that's what the species is. It ends all arguments.
Is there a local natural history museum on Corfu?
Not that I'm aware.
Oh, interesting. Oh, well, Dan, thank you so much for an absolutely fascinating lecture. And I think we should let you get back to your butterflies now. And thanks a lot for talking to us. And those of you who've been here for the lecture, thank you very much for coming. And thanks a lot for coming to this lunchtime lecture series. And please do be sure to tune in again And anyone who, if you hear anyone who is sad they couldn't come, please do tell them that this will be on the Linnean Society's YouTube channel and on the Corfu Butterfly Conservation YouTube channel as soon as we can get it up. So thanks very much, everyone, for coming. Please do look into becoming a fellow of the Linnean Society. It's a great group of people. And thank you, Dan, very much for an illuminating and really interesting lecture today at lunchtime. Thanks a lot, Dan.
You're welcome. Can I just say, if anyone needs to contact me, Dan at corfubutterflyconservation.org.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.